Yeah.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Got the like, share, and subscribe button down there if everybody would hit that. And, of course, there's a PayPal link in the details for anybody who wants to share some love. And the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Tonight we're going to talk about the slavery and ending it, as I've talked many times about correcting the errors in the record and how you're the ones that put the data elements in there. If you remember, recently we spoke about a couple terms, finance and loan. And in that, the term loan specifically said a gift of God, among other things. And so when we think about that term of loan, I want everybody to start using that as the base foundation for that term, as a gift of God. And we got Russ here with us. How you doing tonight, Russ?
Good. Greetings, brother. How are you?
I am well. I am well.
Good to see you.
I've got a lot of windows open here tonight, so we're going to be here a while. So get your pens and notepads out so you can take some notes. Again, if you get bored or anything, just shut it down and start watching again later. I understand. But like I said, we got a lot of information that we're going to talk about as far as the military declassification. And the information I'm going to go over is relative to that birth certificate and executive orders, the financials, money and finance, national security, various different things that we're going to be going over. And I'm hoping I can show you how it all connects, because it's all about the paperwork. Like I said, everything's a negotiable instrument. You just have to learn how to negotiate them. You got anything for us before we get into it there, Russ?
No.
All right. Thank you kindly. And first, we're going to start out with a little short from, this is from a Facebook somebody sent me.
I know y'all seen Miss Morgan's videos. Well, she's moving over to Instagram too, so y'all need to, she's got a really big account on TikTok, but she's moving to the gram, so I'm about to tag her. Y'all go check her out. And she actually wrote this book that she's reading. Listen to this.
And she is not one of my friends. I've never even heard of her until this guy sent me the clip not too long ago. So I just thought it was interesting because it's pretty much in line with the way I think.
We are living in a villain's world, and they designed it perfectly. We eat the food they give us, vote for one.
Oops.
I know y'all seen Miss Morgan's videos. Well, she's moving over to Instagram too, so y'all need to. She's got a really big account on TikTok, but she's moving to the gram. So I'm about to tag her. Y'all go check her out. And she actually wrote this book that she's reading. Listen to this.
We are living in a villain's world, and they designed it perfectly. We eat the food they give us, vote for one of two people that they tell us to, and watch the movies that they show. They take our attention as soon as we reach age 5, and they never give it back. We go to school for 8 hours a day learning what they want us to. They scold us until we obey, and then they praise us when we do. They make us form a habit of waking up and spending our entire day in a building that we wouldn't choose, so that when we get older, we are willing to do the same. Following orders becomes comfortable when we spend our childhood doing what we're told. So when we're older, we hesitate to stray outside the norm. They tell us that we should do anything we can to attend a university, because if we don't, we will fail. They manipulate us into financial dependency at a young age so that we stay liable to the system. They've given us a currency that only has value because they say it does, and we receive it by working at a business that they own. Their millions become billions while the rest of us are forced to sacrifice our time for a minuscule fraction of what our work gains for them. They provide us housing, but make it costly so that we struggle to accumulate enough wealth to escape their system. Our supermarkets are full of brands that they possess, to the point that it is difficult to find ones that they don't. Our meals are either purchased from a store that they most likely own, or created with ingredients from their brand.
I know y'all seen Miss Morgan's videos.
Is that in tune or what, brother?
Love it.
Absolutely. So our next one I'm going to get into is we're going to start in with the parks, forest, and public property. Because this is the first thing that happens when you're born. Actually, it happens before you're born. It's the prenatal record. And what happens is mom goes to the doctor when she finds out she's pregnant, when she thinks she's pregnant, to make sure. And they start creating a record at that time. Okay, now that record is based on mom, and there is no real baby named or even identified other than a baby, a fetus of some sort at some stage. There is no name yet. They don't even know whether it's a boy or girl, so they can't give it a name. They can wish, but they really don't know yet. And so that record, once mom goes into labor at the hospital, gets joined or jointed with another record at the hospital known as, or issued by the birth clerk, known as the Statement of Live Birth. That's a financing document of a record that was created, and that creates the state's the state's vital statistics jurisdiction, which is exclusive to that individual. And it's only because that now has a name and it is enumerated, and the individual's name and number identify the record. It never identifies the living being. And that's the thing that's missing. Nobody made that declaration. So we're going to go over some information. And again, hopefully it's to show you how that document, when they created it, it didn't have a balancing statement, and therefore it was an errored entry, and it comes from a variance of categorical pretreatment standards, pretreatment standards, or factors, I guess they call them, fundamentally different, or with fundamentally different factors. We'll read it here after a bit. So we're going to start out, like I said, public property, National Archives and Records Administration, declassification of national security information, automatic declassification, and it's got just a few short parts. says 1260.5. How are records at NARA reviewed as part of the automatic declassification process? What are the procedures when agency personnel review records in NARA's legal and physical custody? Will NARA loan Ascension records back to the agencies to conduct declassification review? So a loan is something extended to somebody that is expected to be returned back to them. What are NARA considerations when implementing automatic declassification? So let's take a look at that. What are NARA considerations when implementing automatic declassification? Integral file block. So again, integral meaning integer in origin, enumeration. That's when it starts. Classified records with an integral file block that have not been reviewed and property exempted from declassification or referred to an equity holder. So already we see that the file, the enumeration of those records automatically is already starting out with an equity factor. Equity refers to information originally classified by or under control of an agency. The agency was the Social Security Administration by and through the Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services is who holds the estate that was created on that side of the record. In possession of the receiving agency in the event of transfer of function. And so the Health and Human Services got a record or created that record, the estate's vital statistics jurisdiction for the individual, and then they transferred the function to other different agencies upon various other activities. So when you became age of 18, the enumeration was already set up, and then at age of 18, you classified it yourself functionally by filling out the SS5. But again, you were never instructed as to how to competently discern what those data elements in that record meant, because you were never taught these different codes and the different grammars of the different jurisdictions that they use them variantly in. In the possession of a successor agency for an agency that has ceased to exist. So this is like if the hospital no longer exists, those records either go to the county registrar at the county courthouse or the state, generally. Or if they build another hospital, but rename that hospital, say there's a merger, then it would go to that new hospital, the successor agency. So let's look at what records are. Records means the records of an agency, and presidential materials or presidential records, as those terms are defined in Title 44 United States Code, including those created or maintained by a government contractor, licensee, certificate holder, or grantee. Did you grant that information and loan it to them for them to use for certain things and not to be used against you, so that eventually those data elements would come back to you, so that they would know the original source, that are subject to the sponsoring agency's control under the terms of the contract, license, certificate, or grant? So if you're the one granting it, you must know what you're granting and make this and enter into force the controlling factors. If you don't know, then you can't do so. You shouldn't be entering into those contracts. Declassification means the authorized change in the status of information from classified information to unclassified. And a lot of people get these terms mixed up. Classified means it seems somehow means to be hidden. Oh, that's classified. You can't see that. Whereas unclassified seems to be uncovered. Now you can see it. When actually unclassified is the removal of certain information so that it can no longer be used in a classification. It's the information. To unclassified. It's a removal. And you have to direct that removal, that full acquittance and discharge of what has been charged, because I loaned you those data elements. Integral file block means a distinct component of a file series, a distinct component. The legal name is what is enumerated. That legal name is an abstract of a given name and a family name. Distinctly different from the original source of the legal name. The legal name is a derivative. It is not the original. As defined in this section, that should be maintained as a separate unit, states vital statistics jurisdiction exclusive to the individual. That is the unit, the contract postal unit. In order to ensure the integrity, because it's integral, means it's in integer, it has to be enumerated of the records. This is why every time you use that legal name in a different agency, they use their own enumeration. It's like using the same number, but in every agency, they might change the name. That's not the way they do it, though. They use the name and then change the numbering. It's all a coded system, and you can code it any way you want. This is just happens to be the way they do it. An integral file block may consist of a set of records, meaning more than one, covering either a specific topic or a range of time, such as a presidential administration or 5-year retirement schedule within a specific file series that is retired from active use as a group. Like I said, it's not an unclassified where now it goes out in the public and everybody can use it. It's a retired from active use. A use is a thing is defined by its use. This is a use-of-flux system. Learn how to use it. Learn how to use everything they use. For purpose of automatic declassification, integral file blocks shall contain only records dated within 10 years of the oldest record in the file block. Special media records. Why are we talking about media records? Because those are the statistical elements that they use to keep the masses enthralled by the media about all these statistics. You know, all the heart attack deaths and all the COVID identification deaths. Oh, goodness gracious. All kinds of statistics. Statist, I see. statist, IC. That is how you spell it. You spell it with statist first, and then you add an IC. Do you see? Referrals. The IRC at the NDC will provide official notification for federal records, while the RAC project will provide formal notification for presidential records. So what other records are there? What are all these records at the state level, county level, municipal level? Are they presidential records or federal records? Because those are the only two records they're mentioned here. Well, everything is classified from the individual record. You know, that exclusive jurisdiction done through the enumeration at birth. Each one of those is individually separate from all others, foreign to all others. For agencies which fail to act on their referrals after formal notification by the IRC or the RAC project, NARA will automatically declassify their information in accordance with Section 3.3D, 3B of the order. Agencies will identify for additional referrals. Identify referrals in accordance with Section 3.3D3 of the order. NARA will delay automatic declassification for up to 1 year for classified records that have been identified by the originating agency or by NARA as having classified information that requires referral that were not identified by the primary viewing agency or reviewing agency. What I want to point out here real quick is if you think that that identification is so special to you, and that there's somehow some kind of classification on it where they're not supposed to give out information, why do you think they gave you an ID so you can give that information out to everybody that asked for it? Even the clerk down at the local store, when you go to buy something that you're supposed to be of age for, alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco products, things like that, and that clerk who's 16 or 17 years old shouldn't even be selling the damn things, is asking you for an ID. Greetings, John. How you doing tonight? Uh-oh. We're not hearing you. Yeah, you'll have to go out and come back in. We don't hear a word you're saying, brother. You're total silence.
Yeah, I don't hear him either.
Yep. All right. So, discovery of information inadvertently not reviewed. Again, this goes to the correction of the record, and that's what we're doing. We want a judicial review. We want them to review the judicial records, all of them. We want a complete forensic audit. When NARA identifies a file series or collection in its physical and legal custody that contains classified information over 25 years old that was inadvertently not reviewed, and if they have a right to review classified information, then you have the right to review your information, whether it be as to even the relevancy of whether it's be classified or unclassified, because it was inadvertently entered into the record. Not reviewed before the effective date of automatic declassification. NARA must report the discovery to the Information Security Oversight Office. Information Security Oversight Office. They're the ones that have the interest in whether that information has integrity in that record. Information. And it's the information that holds the equity. And all you're doing is claiming your equity and showing that what you put into the record was entered into error and has caused detriment, not just to yourself, but to others. And therefore, you're releasing all liabilities, discharging duties, obligations, and that, so long as all parties are made whole at the end of it. Your attempt is to remedy through redemption and help everybody come out of it unscathed, or as near as may be. And to the responsible agency head or senior agency official within 90 days of discovery. ISOO, the responsible agency, and NARA will consult on a delay of up to 3 years to review the records. It's a long time, folks. It's a long time. Let's see here. Did John make it back? He hasn't even left. Are you here with us, John? Did you fix the mic? Are you there yet? Yeah, it looks like he's in.
Yeah, he's having trouble.
Yeah, he's in and out of signal, so. All right. The next one I have, as it relates to the automatic declassification, is the National Archives Information Security Oversight Office, and they've got their standard forms. Now, these standard forms are relative to the enumeration at birth through, let's look at first SF series, SF 700, Security Container Information, as I believe this is relative to that state's vital statistics jurisdiction that's created upon the enumeration at birth. And it's a container of information related to the security. It's all about security. And then they've got activity security checklist. Is filed out at the end of each day to ensure that classified materials are secured properly and allows for employee accountability in the event that irregularities are discovered. Remember, everybody's considered an employee. Remember that Social Security enumeration declares a Medicare qualified government employee. 702, Security Container Check Sheet. Provides a record of the names and times that persons have opened, closed, and checked a particular container that holds classified information. You got SF 703 Top Secret Cover Sheet, 704 Secret Cover Sheet, 705 Confidential Cover Sheet, 706 is top Secret Label, and then you got Secret Label, Confidential Label, Classified Label, Unclassified Label, Classified SCI Label, and then Declassification Review tab, SF 715. The standard form SF 715 Declassification Review tab is the only tab approved for use by agencies working with federal records. Everything is extended from that federal record. That enumeration at birth is an agreement between us and an official of the state. Who is us? Us is the Department of Defense, and we're going to show you that later on in 5 U.S.C. 301, according to the minimum birth registration requirements and the Plain Writing Act, applicable to the Department of Defense, departmental regulations. Classified national security information. And as soon as they classify you as a newborn child, as a resident or a United States citizenship, that is a classification. Do not be fooled. It means you are classified. So to be unclassified means to be removed. It's not for public view or private view. It's to be removed from the record, not classified. Variances from categorical pretreatment standards that are fundamentally for fundamentally different factors. The information was given in error. I didn't understand the grammar and the request for the information. Now that I understand it better, I can more appropriately give the information, but you would have to accept it in good faith and know that the information I'm giving you is true and correct. And if you don't, then you are required to do your research. Okay, we got John back. You get within signal range now?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, brother, loud and clear. 5x5. How you doing,
All
man?
right. All right. Yeah,
Greetings,
sorry for the
John.
glitch. Yeah, greetings. I just wanted to say to what you were saying a few minutes ago about how they begin all this. It appears that when there's an arrival, okay, a natural arrival, they give you a beige colored document with footprints. Okay, that's beige because it comes from the land. Then it's landscaped format. It's not a legal format document. I don't know if you know what I'm referring to. These are the footprints.
Right. That's
Okay,
your
so
memorial.
as
That's
soon
your
as you see
memorial
a
birth
legal,
certificate.
yeah. So that's why it's done like that, because it's an arrival. So what they're doing is giving you a legal document a few days later, a few weeks later, and as soon as you see the legal format, Keith, with numbers on it, it all goes to hell.
Yeah,
And
and that's
where
because that legal document with that number on it is a security instrument. And like we've been talking about with the offer and acceptance, they offered you a security instrument of the United States. And if you can qualify that and have it sent through to the Treasury Direct, that account was already set up. That's the Social Security account. It's directly tied to the Treasury through the General Ledger. It's a postal account. That's where they post all of the events. That's where they post the information. So yeah, it's all right in line with exactly what we've been describing, and that's a landing certificate. That one with the footprints, that's a landing certificate.
Yeah, and it's landscape, right? It's like a wide format, not legal format.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
good catch on
they're
that.
acknowledging that. You never noticed that?
Well, I noticed it, but I'd never discerned it as that before. I knew the one was a landing certificate, but I didn't know that the other one, as you call it, a landscape, which makes absolutely sense. Because if you have natural land, then it grows naturally. When you have landscape land, that's the presence of the man on the land. He's the one that's landscaping it.
Right. So as soon as you see the legal size, Keith, that's it. It goes downhill from there. As you're showing how all these, securitization begins, and like even there's no Series 7 broker when you're born. There's no attorney. There's no terms and conditions. Nothing. So
unless it's that birth clerk at the hospital, that's a military post. They might be a Series 7 broker. I'm gonna have to do some research, but it's all financial, folks. Every last bit of it. Well, thank you for that. Let's get back to this, because the next one is again 36 parks, forests, and public property. National Archives declassification responsibilities. Who is responsible for the declassification of classified national security executive branch information? And it's going to the executive branch. They're the ones that issue the executive orders. Acquisitions, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders, commercial items. Accessioned by NARA. Remember, that's loaned. Loaned. Same thing, accessioned. Consistent with the requirements of Section 3.3 of the order, an automatic declassification, the originating agency, Health and Human Services, is responsible for declassification of its information and identifying equity holders. Okay? Now, if you know you have equity in there because you're the one that gave them all the information, all you have to do is determine what that information is worth. If they say it's got a par value in their system, then I urge you to do that forensic accounting. So again, the value that still remains there in things like the insurance credits and the unearned income credits and things like that, through that forensic accounting, will come forth and return to you. That's what this is all about. You've already given that system value. It's not only been used against you, but there's value that still remains in that system that's not going anywhere, and nobody else can use it but you. Otherwise, it goes as abandonment, and eventually 70 years down the line, after nobody can make a copyright claim on property of that value or the value of that property, then it goes to the public auction. Any agency may delegate declassification authority to NARA. Any agency, and that means anyone that gave information, granted information, loaned information to that agency or federal government entity, whatever it is, can do the same. Quid pro quo, that's that equal considerations. If an agency does not delegate declassification authority to NARA, the agency is responsible for reviewing the records to identify the equities of other agencies before the date that the records become eligible for automatic declassification. Now, some records that we saw already are going to be up for declassification at 10 years. Some are at 25 years. Some are at 5 years. NARA is responsible for the declassification of records in its legal custody of defunct agencies that have no successor. NARA will consult with agencies having an equity in the record before making declassification determinations in accordance with Section 3.3D3 and 3.6 of the order. So, agencies would include somebody performing the functions of public office as some sort of agent under an identification, the individual. We've discussed this before. Records maintained on individuals. Are those federal government records, or are they, what were the other ones? Federal employee records or whatever. They've got to be one or the other. The next one is, again, same set. This one's general information. What definitions apply to the regulations in this part? Classified national security information or classified information. See, you weren't classified. It's the information that your mom gave as an informant that was then classified. It was classified through an abstracting of that information and recreation as a legal name. Means information that has been determined under Executive Order 13.526 or any predecessor order to require protection against unauthorized disclosure and is marked to indicate its classified status when in documentary form. Classified status when in documentary form. Is that license a documentary form? Is your library card a documentary form? Is your employee card a documentary form? Is your certificate of your Ph.D., is that a document form? So what is this Executive Order 13.526? We're going to take a look at that. Declassification means the authorized change in the status of information from classified information to unclassified information. And again, if you gave it to them, you have the ability to authorize such a change. I mean, they accept that you can give a name change. Isn't that pertinent to the very classified information we're talking about? as it comes to disclosure of the identification? Equity refers to information. Equity refers to information. Therefore, it's the same thing as I've said all along. If you want equity, you must first bring equity. If you want truth, you must first bring truth. If you want information, you must first bring information. The true benefit is the knowledge. If you want knowledge, you must bring knowledge. You must go forth with your 5 talents so that you can come back with 10. You cannot sit there in ignorance and babble and expect to get what you're supposed to get out of life without doing anything for it by not investing in your own knowledge. Originally classified by or under the control of an agency. And it was originally classified by the Social Security Administration that deemed that you were a resident in the state. Passed that information along as well to the United States and said, oh, great, we have a national citizen to give them a gift. Here's your U.S. citizenship. Because the state ceded their jurisdiction to the United States. Therefore, they have to accession those documents to the United States as a matter of historical value that one day will be eventually entered into the National Archives for their statistical elements based upon the death certificate matching the birth certificate. In the possession of the receiving agency in the event of transfer of function. So again, it's the Social Security through the enumeration at birth that assigns Social Security number at birth. And then 18, again, it's the Health and Human Services that regulates all of it. The Health and Human Services gets that information first and gives it to the Social Security Administration. The Health and Human Services is the federal organization that operates in all of the states. That is the federal, Medicare, and Medicaid. Go ahead, John.
And that's why the registrar, Keith, is an immigration office. Did you know that?
Yes. What they're doing is they're immigrating documents. It's an immigration from the municipality to the county. Again, federal, state, or municipal officer or agent. So who is the county? The county is the military function of those branches. They're the ones that hold the county commissioner, the county prosecutor, the county administrative law judge, the county clerk.
Like in Kentucky, it's Division of Local Government Services.
Yes. They're going to divide
under that Social Security coverage, and the advancement of the sheriff's department and the advancement of the county clerk programs. And
it's all a distribution of military things, whether it be paper, products, surplus, services, whatever. All of it, military in form. That's why they call it an infant ward. And you become part of the infantry. So, in the possession of a successor agency for an agency that has ceased to exist. File series means file units. Remember that unit again? Contract postal units. It's all of those things that you post. Facebook is a postal unit. Do you understand? My site is a postal unit. YouTube is a postal unit. It's where we post things. Or documents arranged according to a filing system or kept together because they relate to a particular subject or function, result from the same activity. See, that's the part that's missing. There were things that resulted from the same activity, but there is something that was declared and there's something that wasn't. And you have to make that declaration. He's a respecter of no persons, or he is no respecter of persons. So the creation of a person was heralded, but the living soul who took his first breath of life and became an act of God and was loaned unto the earth as a steward to help provide prosperity and abundance, so that he too could go forth and multiply as that loan, as a prophet unto the nations. You see how it all correlates, folks? It's just different wording. It all means the same thing. Document a specific kind of transaction. Specific kind of transaction. So the specific kind of transaction was the formation of a legal name, which is the legal estate. Take a particular physical form in documentation, or have some other relationship arising out of their creation, receipt, or use, such as restrictions on access or use. See, the classified and unclassified is a matter of access for them. On our side, when we correct it, it's going to be a matter of use. No, we're no longer giving that information for you to use. Okay? That's the unclassification, the declassification. Integral file block means a distinct component of a file series. The number and name together in that coded reference is very distinct. You will not find another Keith Little with that same number. You may find many other Keith Littles, and there are other Keith Littles in this very area, but they will not have the same number. So the numeration is the distinction with the name. There will never be two numbers alike. As defined in this section, that should be maintained as a separate unit in order to ensure the integrity of the records. So again, saying it's the enumeration. An integral file block may consist of a set of records covering either a specific topic or a range of time, the lifetime. It's a probate estate in an irrevocable, or in a revocable public trust, known as a decedent estate, under the care of the Department of State Trust Fund, such as presidential administration or a 5-year retirement schedule within a specific file series that is again retired from active use as a group. Systematic declassification review means the review for declassification of classified information, including previously exempted information contained in records that have been determined by the Archivist of the United States to have permanent historical value in accordance with 4 U.S.C. 2107. So what they're concerned about is the historical value. And again, that's what I'm telling you is the statistical elements. They don't care so much about your name and number. They care about whether that record says you're Black, Caucasian, Latino, whatever. The statistical data elements. So this public law that they have in these codes that I ran across comes from the Council of District of Columbia, and that's where your public laws come up at. Okay, they're going to come from the Council of the District of Columbia, and it says an act to enact Title V, United States Code, Government Organization and Employees. That's that Medicare qualified government employee at enumeration at birth. You're entered into 5 U.S. Code. But again, it's under 5 U.S.C. 301 departmental regulations, which I'm going to show you is applicable to the Department of Defense and has in plain writing minimum birth registration requirements. Codifying the general and permanent laws relating to the organization of the government of the United States and its civilian officers and employees. So if you think you have that nice ID in your pocket and you got a job down at McDonald's and you're a civilian employee, as you firmly believe, damn well right, you better believe that's what they're presuming too. But understand that they're considering you a government organization or employee of that government organization. So you are either a federal official or an employee through one of the agencies known as an official or agent of the state, the municipality, state, or federal government. So who are all these county employees? I ask serious questions for a reason, folks. You guys got anything on this?
Not really, Keith, but they're always trying to like put a number everywhere. I noticed that a lot. But I also noticed that they try to get people to work under government, either grant subsidies as much as possible. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to get everyone to be a government employee. Yeah, as much as possible.
Yeah, that's the way this system works. If they can't have you, then you're competition. And if you're competition to this system, like I said, the English language is beautiful. Same with this contract system. If you're competition for this and you can subsequently, independently, privately do your own contracts, every government on this planet won't necessarily fear you, but they'll certainly know what the terms and conditions are when you put them on those documents. So the next one is that 5 U.S. code, part of that 5 U.S. code that we were talking about under 5 U.S.C. 301 departmental regulations. This one here, and greetings, Ascent of Mind. How are you doing this evening?
How's it going, man? Got here late.
That's all right. We're only just under an hour into it, so we're going to be going for a while. I still got 10 more windows open at least.
I just heard like the last 5 minutes. It sounds pretty good, so I'm going to listen and see what's going on, then I'll comment.
All right. And as we saw in the last one, that Public Law 89.54, Title 5 is government organization and employees, right? So here we have public information, agency rules, opinions, orders, records, and proceedings. Again, not one damn law. Okay? The law was the public law that enacted this, and this is not law. This is a agency rule under that law, which you see comes from Washington, D.C., which has no statehood here. They call it a city-state, but it has no city, or it has no statehood as part of the Americas. It is a corporate entity, and it operates under the long-arm statutes of municipal or mayoral governments. So, this is the public information.
Never seated by a standing legislature.
No, you won't. Public information. Guess where they get this public information, guys?
Us.
Yep, from 552A. Records maintained on individuals, and that record starts as soon as you're born. The enumeration at birth, the state's vital statistics jurisdiction, exclusive to the individual, and the individual's name and number identify the record. It's the record that's maintained. And as long as you keep giving them data elements, they're going to keep asserting authority, and they don't understand themselves that they only have authority over the record. And that's the same problem you have. They only have authority over the record, folks, nothing else.
Yeah, they've been telling us our whole lives who we are. I think it's time we tell them who we really are.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's what we're doing is we're pulling out our equity in these records by fixing the errors. And again, we have to put that blame on ourselves for not understanding this first and foremost before we went out into the world as young adults. And yes, we can help. We can put some of that blame on mom and dad, but we have to at some point in our time take responsibility for it. I'm pissed at myself because I was a bitch ass slave most of my life. I was the fool most of my life. I didn't realize until I was damn near 50 years old that I had to stop doing what I'm doing and find a new way.
Yep.
There comes a point in time where you've got to realize, something's so seriously wrong, or you're just too dumb, or that too many people have been lying to you. This and that. That's what I've concluded is many people are willing to put on that supposed insurance of being able to get away with the little lies and stuff, that now we think those little lies are just little lies, and they're the whole world. It means the whole world to be honest and truthful now. You really have to quit lying to yourself.
Yep. The problem is they use our innocence on us when we're young, and we're so willing to help and do what we're supposed to do. We listen to everything they tell us. Like, they give you different careers to choose from. We never get to find out who we are until we live long enough and say, something ain't right here. And that happened when I was about 20, but I was still unaware till I was about 40, 42, something like that. And then since about 2010, I've been awake to everything that's going on and studying and learning. But they freely hand out personalities for you to be when you're young, and you just pick one.
Yeah, I recommend you just quit filing taxes. Of course, that's not as simple as it's going to be. You'll have to do a little research. It is all voluntary. They even have a code that says it has no legal effect.
Yeah,
so
I
if the
stopped
tax
filling
code,
out their forms long ago.
yeah,
But
it's
I think we can use the IRS for our benefit too. So
you
I'm starting
can.
to change my mind on that because of Derek,
Well,
what they teach. But I've
well,
always thought the IRS was evil till like last year.
the principle is that you have to learn how to communicate with them. You either have private addresses or you communicate with them. And remember, folks, communication is conveyance of a debt. So if you're going to communicate with them, make sure they understand that the conveyance of the debt is to repay what you put into the system that you weren't supposed to be. You weren't qualified for. Okay? That's all we're doing. Oops. Didn't mean that, John. And so it's a matter of, again, comprehending everything's backwards. You're not getting your use out of the system in a usufruct system that has equal consideration and equal benefit. It's like John and Matthew sitting down at the playground. They're a couple little 7, 8-year-old boys, and they got their toys, and one's got the dump loader, and the other one's got the excavator. And here, Johnny, you get to use my excavator. Okay, thanks, Matthew. I'll let you use my dumper. That's all we're supposed to be doing. We don't have to have a cost or an expense. It's a matter Earth already provides for us. We just have to use our ingenuity, learn how to get along freely and peaceably.
My main issue is trying to figure out how to stay in the banking system because I'm on the edge of not being able to do that anymore. So
Yeah,
trying to figure out which way to go on that.
Well, like I said, I just ordered my birth certificates. I haven't even opened it up yet. I got that yesterday, and of course I got my receipt. And of course I've got my receipt and everything. So that's going to get, I'm going to have a copy of that. And of course I'll do my endorsing and stamping for that.
Yeah.
I've got to get my TDA account set up and a couple other things. And I'm going to I got 3 of them for now. And I'm going to a local bank here soon to set up the trust account. I got to talk to a few more yet, find out who's got the signatures guarantee, medallion stamp signature guarantee representative.
Yeah.
A few other details and go in and get that set up so I can start discharging shit straight through the trust.
What do you think about using online notaries
You don't need it
for documents? Like if you're gonna copy documents that you send,
again, you
like
don't need it. Again, you don't need it. Listen, folks, if you're not organized under the laws of the United States, you don't have to follow the laws of the United States. You have an equal station of life to present the same format or equal proof, and that is 3 signatures, 3 witnesses. Profession, blank line, and then after they sign, they put down their profession. And you think that people are going to put down electrician or plumber. No, you tell them profession, truth. That's my only profession.
Yep. I would say my signature, my index finger, and my thumb is my 2 witnesses.
Good. Depends on how far you. Depends on how far you.
Good people that are going to be witnesses when you don't really have no one around you. That's the tough part.
Well, you got to understand too. You know, if you're a stranger and a sojourner with him, isn't he a witness?
Yep.
Okay. Now look at them scriptures again, folks. That's Leviticus 25, verse 25. The land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. That's one claim. That's one witness. That's a witness in the record. Now another scripture, which is another witness.
It's hard to get the slaves to agree with you, though.
the Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. So there's a second witness. Now there's many verses that you can use, and I specifically point out John 8 verses 14 through 20, where it talks about he is a witness unto me and I am a witness unto myself. There's your 2 witnesses. And then they turn around and ask him, well, where is your father? And he comes back right away with him, well, if you don't recognize me, then that's why you don't recognize my father. If you don't recognize my father, that's why you don't recognize me, you dumbass. You're a spitting image and likeness, just like I am. Why don't you recognize your father in me?
See, I come up on these panels because you got the rap going down. You got to speak this stuff or it's hard to communicate. You got to speak it and teach it and preach it.
Yeah.
That helps you learn, man.
Well, and that goes to that first and second name as well. You know, when you're born, you've got a first name and everybody calls you by that first name out in that public venue. But you've got a private name that your private family members can use. And that's what happened to me when I was younger. They'd get mad at me and they'd holler out, Keith. But if they got really mad and I wasn't coming home or something, they knew I was down at the end of the block and they weren't going to walk all the way up. They'd holler out very loud, Keith Orland.
Yeah.
And you know,
I've heard that one before.
And so we realized through my research, and I spoke on heraldry earlier, and it goes to being able to express yourself. And so when you turn 18, that's when you're supposed to bring out that second given name, or even create a second given name yourself. Because in the origins of the beginnings, there wasn't any last names. He was just known as the Smithy. If you didn't know him, he was the Smithy. That's not a last name. That's a reference.
Yes, sir.
And so the people that knew him privately called him John. But in public, everybody called him Smithy.
Yeah, the Smithy.
So you have to understand use is what defines things. Today, the surname, its use is for commerce. Period. So let's get back to it, because the next one I got is a Executive Order 13-526. Where did we see that? We saw that back here with definitions. Classified national security information or classified information means information that has been determined under Executive Order 13-526. So we're going to take a look at this. classified national security information. And the part we're going to look at, it says original classification. Classification standards. Information may be originally classified under the terms of this order only if all of the following conditions are met. An original classification authority is classifying the information. The information is owned by, produced by, or for, or is under the control of the United States government. So when you produce information on documents that the government provides you, you are giving them information for the United States government. The information falls within one or more of the categories of information listed in section 1.4 of this order. So we'll go down and take a look at that. The original classification authority determines that the unauthorized disclosure of the information reasonably could be expected to result in damage to the national security, which includes defense against transnational terrorism. An original classification authority is able to identify or describe the damage. See, they can't identify the damage to the individual. You have to identify that yourself. And again, I'm telling you, the identification of the damage is the fact that they conferred a nationality upon you and never taught you how to use it, and then claimed at the state level that you were a Medicare qualified government employee and a resident at the time you were born, meaning that you were a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence was deemed necessary by the board, and that event never happened. If that event never happened, then it was an error in the entry. And mom entering it into the record for the government does not qualify it as such. Had she known better, she would have brought it up before the board, said, hey, you can't do that until he's age of majority, can make that decision himself. I mean, isn't it even the national requirement that a young man has to be 18 years of age before he can sign up for the military?
Yep.
Okay, so 5 U.S.C. 301 departmental regulations as it applies to the Department of Defense. Minimum requirements for birth registration is a Department of Defense issue.
So what do you think about FinCEN? Do you think you have to register that with that if you're doing the securities and instruments and all that?
I'm
I
not
heard
quite
that
sure.
you should, because Derek's
Yeah.
class taught that, and he was talking about it. You register your all caps name there so they know who's doing the negotiable instruments and securities. And supposedly there's a $50,000 fine for not registering, but it actually protects you so no one could fraud your name if you sign up
Right.
on it.
Right, and that's one of the things that you use in a forensic securities audit, is that every time that thing pops up that wasn't qualified under that FinCEN, guess what? That's a $50,000 fine for each event by each one involved in that event.
This is a full-time job, man. I'm trying to do this and work. I'm like, how am I going to do all this stuff while I'm working? It's really hard. So it's taken me a long time to just get stuff moving, but I'm starting.
Well, yeah, and that's why we've got to understand this language is how you get yourself out of that employment situation where they're telling you have to work. You don't.
Yeah.
Again, if you understand that you're a prophet unto the nation and that you're supposed to be lenders unto the nation under Deuteronomy 15:6, and what a loan is an act of God, then that very act of God, the first breath you took, is what was supposed to be heralded unto the nation, and they failed to do that. All they did was gave a person. The United States, in exchange, gave a person. Okay? You have to exchange that loan in equal consideration for equal benefit. You have to be in agreement. You have to be a prophet unto the nations. Quit squabbling and being a belligerent, saying, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Understand your greater capacity as being one of the people and delegating your authority unto that nation. And
So
again,
you think handwritten documents are better? Write your own handwritten documents?
well, it's got a superior enforcement, superior authority,
No,
according
that's
to
what
the
I heard too. Only a
yeah,
man can write.
according to the UCC. That's what they recognize. We just went
All
over
right.
that the other day.
Because I was getting all freaked out trying to format stuff to their rules and everything. And I'm like, I don't know all these damn rules.
Okay, the second one is where I'm pointing out is that it wasn't required to be classified. If there is significant doubt about the need to classify information. So again, we see that same language deemed necessary by the board. It has to be needed. If it's not needed, then it's not required, and therefore they're not supposed to inquire as to where they can acquire it. This provision does not, it says, if there is significant doubt about the need to classify information, it shall not be classified. This provision does not amplify or modify the substantive criteria or procedures for classification, or create any substantive or procedural rights subject to judicial review. It doesn't create any substantive or procedural rights subject to judicial review because you already have substantive procedural rights to judicial review because you're the one that entered the damn data elements to begin with.
Dumbass. That's what I think. Dumbass. Why did I check that damn box so many times? U.S. citizen, U.S. citizen,
Yep.
U.S. citizen.
Yep.
Dumbass.
Over and over again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands. Da, 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 da.
I'll just say I was in a spell of illness.
Yep. From day one. From the first
Spell of
day.
illness, man. I finally woke up.
Classified information shall not be declassified automatically as a result of any unauthorized disclosure of identical or similar information. So it's not identical or similar information, it's the information we've been giving them, and it's ours. The unauthorized disclosure of foreign government information is presumed to cause damage to the national security. You are, in fact, able to govern yourself. That in and of itself is a foreign government. It's the mentality of self-governing.
Yeah. You do got to manage your body politic.
Section 1.3, Classification Authority. The authority to classify information originally may be exercised only by the President and Vice President, agency heads and officials designated by the President, and United States government officials delegated this authority pursuant to paragraph C of this section. Officials authorized to classify information at a specified level are also authorized to classify information at a lower level. So when you have the Health and Human Services at the federal level, they can classify information through the Health and Human Services at the state level. Delegation of original classification authority. Delegations of original classification authority shall be limited to the minimum required to administer this order. The minimum required to administer that order is the enumeration at birth, which is an agreement with between us and an official of the state, the Social Security Administration, and its commissioner. Agency heads are responsible for ensuring that designated subordinate officials have a demonstrable and continuing need to
Yep.
exercise this authority. Again, it's got to be necessity, folks. Quit volunteering. That's all you got to do. Do they need your taxes? No, it's voluntary, so I quit volunteering. It was never deemed necessary. So let's look at this 1.4. Classification categories. Information shall not be considered for classification unless its unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause identifiable or describable damage to the national security in accordance with Section 1.2 of this order that referred us to this part. And it pertains to one or more of the following. We don't have to go beyond A. Military plans, weapons systems or operations, but we will go beyond A because it then goes on to say foreign government information. That information you gave it is an exchange from a foreign government and recognized by the gift in exchange, supposedly of equal consideration, the nationality of a United States citizenship under full faith and credit, an internationally protected person wherein full faith and credit is given to protection orders. Intelligence activities, including covert action, intelligence sources or methods, or cryptology, foreign relations, or foreign activities of the United States. And remember, 26 U.S.C. 1031, exchange of real property for productive use or investment, subsection H, real property located inside of the United States and real property located outside of the United States is therefore not of like kind. Therefore, it must be an exchange. Did the state make an exchange with the United States? Did they make an exchange with mom? Was everybody equally considered in those exchanges? I think not. Including confidential sources. Mom was the informant. Scientific, technological, or economic matters relating to national security and the enumeration at birth creates a chattel paper, a security instrument. United States government programs for safeguarding nuclear materials or facilities, vulnerabilities or capabilities of systems, installations, infrastructures, projects, plans, or protection services relating to national security, national defense, general welfare, and domestic tranquility, as noted in the preamble, to form a more perfect union. Now we're going to go down to 3.3. Which is where it mentions the automatic declassification. Let me blow this up a little bit. My apologies, I should have done this long ago. But section 3.3, automatic declassification. And you guys feel free to stop me anytime you've got to interject, anything to interject. Subject to paragraphs B through D and G through J of this section, all classified records that, 1, are more than 25 years old, and 2, have been determined to have permanent historical value under Title 44, United States Code, shall be automatically declassified, whether or not the records have been reviewed. And so what they mean there is they're going to declassify and take all the historical data elements out of them so they can post them in the National Archives. So it's a matter of publicizing the statistical elements. So they're still not going to reveal the name and number. Okay? It's just the statistical data elements. That's what it was created for, and this is the final effect. Upon the death certificate, they remove the data elements from your record for its statistical purposes to keep track of all those events in one's life. Did you work at a factory all your life? Were you an executive? You know, this goes to employment statistics, health statistics, educational statistics, military statistics, all of it. It's a logistics company. The military is a commercial logistics organization, privatized at that, just like the prison systems. All classified records shall be automatically declassified on December 31st of the year that is 25 years from the date of origin, except as provided in paragraphs B through D and G through J of this section. If the date of origin of an individual record cannot be readily determined, the date of original classification shall be used instead. This is that file date on your birth certificates. File date. You'll have the day that you're born, and then you'll have a file date that will generally be anywhere likely about 10 to 30 days, sometimes maybe as late as 40 days later. So when they ask you for your birth date, that's the date that you're supposed to give them. It'll refer to that record. Individual's name and number identify the record. And that shadow paper, that's the bailment as we spoke about before. It's a bail document. It's a document of title you can use in lieu of bail. An agency head may exempt from automatic declassification under paragraph A of this section specific information, the release of which should clearly and demonstrably be expected to reveal the identity of confidential human source, a human intelligence source, a relationship with an intelligence or security service of a foreign government or international organization or non-human intelligence source, or impair the effectiveness of an intelligence method currently in use, available for use, or under development. Remember, I spoke about that. We're just under development. We're not fully organized. These organizational laws and codes do not apply to us. Unincorporated, not organized, do not have a board of directors to hire an attorney in these administrative courts of which they administer these codes. We minister in our natural capacity. We're supposed to, according to the scriptures I interpret and research, say that we're supposed to minister and be a prophet unto the nations. Reveal information that would assist in the development, production, or use of weapons of mass destruction. Reveal information that would impair U.S. cryptological systems or activities. Reveal information that would impair the application of the state-of-the-art technology within a U.S. weapons system. Reveal formally named or numbered U.S. military war plans. The individual's name and number identify a record, and that record is a military plan that remain in effect or reveal operational or tactical elements of prior plans that are contained in such active plans. Gentlemen that went to the military, you got that DD-214, are you still active? I ask this because that DD-214 has a capacity of being discharged or released. And if you got the DD-214 release, then you are still on active duty and you do not have liberty. That's why you are required to carry that ID. Otherwise, you would have a statement of separation and now be able to walk the lands with private credentials.
Wonder if you could do your like discharge and then give them your rate for all the service for your services.
Well, yeah, if
You
you're
owe
going to
me
do that,
$5.5 million or whatever.
well, that's the purpose of the release and knowing how to contract and use these security instruments. If you know that information, when you go up on that DD 214, if you really want to go full private, you can do so. But if you want to remain in the public sector, and say become an officer of the law because you do know the Constitution, you are a good faith man, then I recommend doing so. Those are the kind of people we need.
Yeah,
But
I think you should do that. You know a lot of info.
But remember to make sure that if you're going to do it in good faith, if there's going to be emoluments, you do it on a very reasonable scale. You don't want to be caught up in those kind of positions, particularly taking upon emoluments and then being found in violation. And again, this is why I again recommend that if you are operating in good faith, you go ahead and discharge that DD 214, do your private business and public service still, but you do it for free. See, I am a public servant, folks, but my public service is not to my brothers for an emolument. I do everything I can to help my brothers as far as the educational department comes along, because that's about the only thing I can do. I can't give you money. I can't give you a program that's going to keep the homeless off the street. I can't do that kind of shit right now. Someday I hope to be able to. And that's my view of being able to help people in that monetary system is not by handing out Federal Reserve notes, which I know are to be unlawful for me to do so, but to do it correctly through paperwork where I can do the discharging and provide those money, property, labor, and services on credit. Not necessarily even just by myself, but by being able to know how those instruments work so I can fund the local programs that are already doing it along with the federal funding. And not for their damn paychecks. See, that's what the federal funding is doing, is it's going mostly to their paychecks and stuff like that. Facility rent, equipment, things like that, rather than going into the communities where it's needed. And that way, if we have more people like myself that know how these instruments work and that it's a gift of God, then we go ahead and lend unto the nation. We do so at the local level by contributing to those charities that are working for good purposes. And also, those are the places where we employ ourselves for those emolument-free positions to help the federal funding to go through directly to the community as well. I get so sick and tired of these nonprofits hiring people as executives and officers and agents for pay. I know there are plenty of seniors that have the ability to do those, fulfill those things, that would be able to do that on a part-time basis and volunteer their time. That would cut down a large portion of those such paid positions. It's time to start stepping up. So let's get back to it. Reveal information, including foreign government information, that would cause serious harm to relations between the United States and a foreign government or to ongoing diplomatic activities of the United States. So even as a foreign government, a foreign body, we are the ones that are born on this land, and that United States is a corporate body government, and we, upon that national conference, accept that gift. But they too have to be in that same position, equal consideration, to accept the gift and the fact that we are the gift of God. Okay, if you want to exchange things of like kind, you want to call it a gift, a conference of a nationality. That is a gift. That's a grant. Okay, I was granted unto the nations as a prophet. Now we get down to the terms and conditions of those words. You have to use the right words. That's jurisdiction. Reveal information that would impair the current ability of the United States government officials to protect the president, vice president, and other protectees for whom protection services in the interest of national security are authorized. Again, that United States citizen is an internationally protected person. Why would it not be? It was created by the United States. Why would they not protect it? You have to get people to understand that concept so that instead of using it against you, it's in the interest of the United States, payable to the Treasury, or for a reissue of security. Reveal information that would seriously impair current nationality emergency preparedness plans, or reveal current vulnerabilities of systems, installations, or infrastructures relating to the national security, or violate a statute, treaty, or international agreement that does not permit the automatic or unilateral declassification information at 25 years. One of my favorites, because it says unilateral, but we can do a multilateral, and we can do it pursuant to the treaties. See, this is the Treaty of Berne, literary and artistic works. It goes to the intangibles. The data elements that I gave them was a literal creative work of my mom and dad. They gave it to them. It was supposed to be confidential by an informant. Confidential with fidelity. Confided in them with fidelity. So with treaty, that's what fidelity means, agreement, a peace. They're going to keep it private. Oops, they didn't keep it private, did they? We're going to go down to the next one. Oops, too far. Where did I miss? There it is. Mandatory declassification review. Except as provided in paragraph B of this section, all information classified under this order, it's an order, or predecessor order shall be subject to a review for declassification by the originating agency if the request for a review describes the document or material containing the information with sufficient specificity to enable the agency to locate it within a reasonable amount of effort. The document or material containing the information responsive to the request is not contained within an operational file exempted from search and review, publication, and disclosure under 5 U.S.C. 552 in accordance with the law. And the information is not subject of pending litigation. Remember we just saw that? That's that public information, agency rules, opinions, orders, records, and proceedings. And then that's, of course, what develops the records maintained on individuals. By allowing them to create a record maintained on individuals, you subsequently agreed to allow them to publish information in the public according to their agency rules, opinions, orders, records, and proceedings, so that they could drag your ass into that administrative court in public and blast that name all over the newspaper if you got in an accident or had certain violations of their codes, rules, opinions, orders, records, and proceedings. See, we've all been enslaved by the language. I want to take a minute real quick to thank everybody for your support. We got Channel 3 down there, to Ace, Moonbug, Rebecca. Who else here? We got Skrull David, I know Bear Jew was here earlier. C. Thomas. Others, if I don't see you, my apologies. Goldsmith. So appreciate everybody's support. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And again, there's a PayPal link in the details for anybody that wants to share some love. I'm going to drop the panel link for anybody else that might want to join. Always great to have people up. And let's get on with it again. We're going to get to the next one. We're done with this DCPD document, which is Executive Order 13-526, as we were looking at. The next one we're going to look at is that National Defense, Title 32. Because like I said, it has to do with the Department of Defense. And it's about the nationality, which was conferred upon everybody known as the United States citizenship, an internationally protected person that is, in fact, being violated day in and day out by the very agencies and officials that should know better. And it says this part updates policies and responsibilities for the Department of Defense Personnel Security Program. So it's personnel, which is the government officials and employees. Okay. Consistent with Executive Order 12968 as amended, Executive Order 10450 as amended, Executive Order 10865 as amended, Executive Order 13526. Recognize that? 13526. Oops. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where do we go? There we go. Executive Order 13526 that we just went over. And then it's got Executive Order 12829 as amended, Executive Order 13467, Executive Order 13488, Executive Order 12333 as amended, and 5 U.S.C. 301, and all these others, which we can look at some other time. I already did a video on this, went through all this stuff. I'll have to find it, pull that up again. But 5 U.S.C. 301 is the one I'm talking about. And we're going to take a look at that next. Because this is purpose. National defense, the purpose. And it's according to all these executive orders and statutes. And you got to remember, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders. Okay? So this is a federal statute. And here we see it under Cornell, which is generally one of my favorite sites to look at for these codes. And you'll see it says notes. What's a note? It's a promise if it's a note. Okay? So under here, there's a bunch of promises. There's your public law, stat, public law, short title, definition, da-da-da. These are all the notes and what it refers to. These are the promises. Okay? Oops. And it says departmental regulations. The head of an executive department or military department may prescribe regulations for the government of his department, the conduct of its employees, the distribution and performance of its business, and the custody, use, and preservation of its records, papers, and property. Once you enter those data elements into their records, it now becomes their property to use. What do you get to use in return? The citizenship. When you learn how to use it, you get exchanged value for that use. This section does not authorize, you get the protections. This section does not authorize withholding information from the public or limiting the availability of records to the public. So when you enter that data, those data elements into their public record, they're now going to smear them all over the place and defame you any way they want, unless you learn how to qualify that entrance. Does that make sense, guys? Hope I'm not babbling.
No, you're all good.
All right, and as I mentioned, that 5 U.S.C. 301 Cornell is my favorite generally, but sometimes you have to look up the governmental published text PDFs to get the full view of them. So this one here is what we read just now. And then under historical and revision notes, see if we go back here and go under notes, it says historical and revision notes, derivation, U.S. Code, 5 U.S. Code 222, and then Public Law 86619, It's going to say pretty much the same thing. And so here, it says, except to the extent inconsistent with the provisions of this act, the National Security Act of 1947, the provisions of Title IV of the revised statutes, as now or hereafter amended, shall be applicable to the Department of Defense, is omitted from this title, but is not repealed, meaning that it still applies, and it only applies to the Department of Defense because it mentions no one else. It doesn't say it applies to anything else but the Department of Defense, right? And that's the same thing we get in this document. So the government publishing office, when they publish it on the PDF form like this here, it's going to have both the Cornell code and then the notes down below it, and they're going to be identical. So the only difference is on the Cornell site, you just have to go to the notes part. You got the U.S. code and then the notes. So all they did was just separate them into different pages. Just a little tip on your research there. You're still going to get the same information. So we have this, and it says, after it tells us this about the military, it says the words executive department are substituted for department, as the definition of department applicable to this section is coextensive with the definition of executive department in section 101. The words not inconsistent with law are omitted as surplusage, as a regulation which is inconsistent with law is invalid. A regulation which is inconsistent with law is invalid. What law do you follow? Are you a prophet unto the nation, or are you going to serve a military unit under a nation? What is your equity? The words or military department are inserted to preserve the application of the source of law. The words or military department are inserted to preserve the application of the source of law. Oops. Somehow I'm not sharing that. My apologies. My apologies, folks. So just so you know, the words or military department are inserted to preserve the application of the source of law. So it's saying that the source, application of the source law. So they're saying the source law here is military. What's your source law? Is there an inconsistency with your law? Did you become indoctrinated into military law and military code by a military language known as English? That is Babylonian. It's a twist and jumble of many different languages.
Same Roman law they've been using for a long time.
Yep. And then it goes on to say, before enactment of the Social Security Act amendments of 1949, the Department of the Army, the Department of the Navy, and the Department of Air Force were executive departments. The National Security Act amendments of 1945 established the Department of Defense as an executive department, including the Department of the Army, the Department of the Navy, and the Department of the Air Force as military departments, not as executive departments. So the executive department is now the Department of Defense as an executive department, including the Department of the Army, and now these are subsequent departments, not executive, but administrative. However, the source law for this section, which was in effect in 1949, remained applicable to the secretaries of the military departments by virtue of Section 12G of the National Security Act amendments of 1949, which provided all laws, orders, regulations, and other actions relating to the national military establishment, the departments of the Army, the Navy, or Air Force, or to any officer or activity of such establishment or such departments, shall, except to the extent inconsistent with the provisions of this act, have the same effect of this act, or same effect as if this act had not been enacted. But after the effective date of this act, any such law, order, regulation, or other action which vested, it's an investment, functions in otherwise related to any officer, department, or establishment shall be deemed to have vested such function in or relate to the officer or department, executive or military, succeeding the officer, department, or establishment in which the same function was vested. So when they invested in that information, it was a transfer of the same functions, of the performance of the functions of office, and they trained you to act similarly through a public education indoctrination training. All military. For purposes of this subsection, the Department of Defense shall be deemed the department succeeding the national military establishment, and the military departments of Army, Navy, and Air Force shall be deemed the department succeeding the executive departments of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. This section was part of Title IV of the Revised Statutes, the Act of July 26, 1947, 3 Stat 201D, as added August 10, 1949, Chapter 412, Section 463, Stat 579, former 5 U.S.C. 171-1, which provides, again, except to the extent inconsistent with the provisions of this Act, National Security Act of 1947, the provisions of this of Title IV of the Revised Statutes, as now or hereafter amended, shall be applicable to the Department of Defense, is omitted from this title but is not repealed. So it's still applicable, and it's applicable to the Department of Defense. Right after that, it says standard changes are made to conform with the definitions applicable and the style of this title is outlined in the preface to the report. The style, that goes to the style of grammar, and right away they say plain writing in government documents. The style is supposed to be plain writing in government documents. You see before us government documents, and they are plain writing. So please pay attention. This act may be cited as a Plain Writing Act for 2010 for purposes. The purpose of this act is to improve the effectiveness and accountability of federal agencies to the public by promoting clear government communication that the public can understand and use. Again, it's a usufruct, and you're supposed to know how to use this information, and they're telling you right here that is one of their obligations because it is the purpose of the plain writing in the government documents under the Plain Writing Act. You want to see all your military youth organizations? We got the Boy Scouts of America, the Girl Scouts of the United States of America. Oh, goodness. How come it doesn't say the Boy Scouts of the United States of America? Ooh. You guys ever wonder about that? Boys Club of America, the Girls Club of America, the Young Men's Christian Association, YMCA, Young Women's Christian Association, the Civil Air Patrol, United States Olympic Committee. Did you know that was military? Did you know that's a military advertisement of the nation's skills in those sporting competitions? What is a javelin throw? Are you throwing javelins at an enemy? Are you throwing rocks in the catapult or the shot put? Excuse me. What are some of those? Can you run faster? Can you jump a longer creek? Can you jump over some of those landmine areas if you know what's coming? I don't know. The Special Olympics. You know, all those people with mental disabilities and stuff, you know, they're required to have identifications too. Campfire USA, the Young Marines, the Naval Sea Cadets Corps, 4-H clubs. You know, that's the agricultural part, right? Did you know that's military? That's why they're issuing military script. They're called birth certificates for livestock. The Police Athletic League. Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America. Oh, goodness. If you ain't got enough mommies and daddies and big brothers and big sisters to adopt the children, you can create an organization under the military regime to find those foundlings again. National Guard Challenge Program, and any other organization designated by the president as an organization that is primarily intended to serve individuals under the age of 21 years. Is that your public education system? Don't they serve individuals under age of 21 years? That is an individual record that they're keeping, right? Provide training in citizenship, leadership, physical fitness, service to community, and teamwork. Promote the development of character and ethical and moral values. Do you think we're missing these last two? Let's talk about that, guys. Do you think we're missing those last two?
Definitely.
Do you think we could improve upon that?
Can improve on that and many other things that we need to improve upon. That's for sure. Just like making people aware is the hardest thing. Like the people I live with, I think I'm going to have to move really soon because this person I'm living with is crazy. Don't know nothing about anything, money, nothing. She's just lost in the sauce.
Right. And the primary term there is we, because they ain't going to do it.
No.
They're just doing their job. We're the only ones that can do this. We're the
I
only
see
ones
that.
that can educate them, and they have to be willing. And there's going to be a lot of them going to get thrown under the bus because they ain't
Yeah.
going to be willing. They're going to
A
be too
lot of
stubborn.
them aren't going to be willing. That's for sure. No
Absolutely.
matter what you say to them, they're right. They can't be wrong. Yep.
We have to start learning how to invest in our future generations and
Yeah.
quit letting this system do the investment and causing the detriment, harm, damage through not educating them appropriately. And again, like I said last night, I'm going to do a review on the General Education Provisions Act one of these days as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
It's definitely pitted people against each other so hard that it's hard, man. People just are so competitive and they want their money, blah, 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 blah. It's just they're so programmed. It's crazy. You try to tell them there is no money. They think you're crazy.
Okay, let's go on to the next part. This is the last part we got on this one. And it is minimum standards. Minimum standards for birth certificates. In this section, enacting this note and repealing provisions set out as a note below. The term birth certificate means a certificate of birth for an individual, regardless of where born. The individual's name and number identify the record. So the birth certificate means a certificate of birth for an individual, for a record, who is a citizen or national of the United States at birth. There is no such evidence. The evidence presented to the record is in fact false and is not just inconsistent, but impossible. Again, because there is no birth registration in the United States. And if you think that you were born in one of the states and the birth registration in the state means that you were born in the United States, you misconceive the idea of what the United States is. The United States is located in Washington, D.C. They taught you in that public education system that all those states of the Union of the States, known as the United States, represented on that map, meant all of those states as you see in the physical form, and that is not so. Again, the United States is the record. That record has individuals that are identified by a name and a number. B, whose birth is registered in the United States. So, is there a birth registration in the United States? I want everybody to take a moment real quick before I pull it up. Everybody take a moment. I know you got access to some other window on your device somewhere where you can put that question into your search engine and put in, is there a registration in the United States? Somebody, I need people to do that and put down in chat what you get for an answer. I want the first one on the top of your Google, the first one that comes up in your search engine. Is there a birth registration in the United States? This is plain writing. It's in their code, and it doesn't exist. It's an impossibility, and therefore it fails the minimum birth registration requirements. In all cases, across the board. In case you don't understand that. Anybody pull that up yet? Somebody pull it up.
Yeah, I pulled it up. The census. Let's see what it says. Census Bureau does not issue birth certificates, nor does it keep files or indexes of birth records. These are maintained by vital statistic offices. I don't see anything.
Okay. Well, I don't know how you guys got that.
That was from Brave browser. The first one on top that come up was the census.
Okay. See if there's another one. Then do me a favor and see if there's another one.
Let me see.
Because that's the same thing a lot of people might come up with if they have.
I see it. It says, "Is there in the United States there is no National Federal Birth Registry, American Bar."
Did you lose your other device, John?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to close that one out. So yeah, it's a decentralized system in the United States. There is no national federal birth registry as you might see in other nations such as the United Kingdom. November 20th, 2018. Hey, Channel 3? Who wrote that? C. Thomas has it. American Bar Association. So, is the American Bar Association or any other attorney going to argue with that? I wouldn't expect that they would.
Yeah, I think they'd stutter a little.
Did I close out the wrong one, John? Yeah, we're not hearing you at all, John. Which device are you on? You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, they're not going to argue with that.
Well, they can't. I mean, it's coming from the horse's mouth. Who would be stupid enough to argue with that? Isn't that an impossibility? Let me pull that up again, folks. You just read it. Let me pull that up again.
All this time, and no one's even seen it except for you.
Okay, it says a decentralized system, and in the United States, there is no national federal birth registry, as you might see in other nations. I know I'm reading the comment, and then here we have whose birth is registered in the United States. Is issued by a federal, state, or local government agency or authorized custodian of a record and produced from birth records maintained by such agency or custodian of record, or is an authenticated copy issued by a federal, state, or local government agency or authorized custodian of record of an original certificate of birth issued by such agency or custodian of the record, who is a citizen or national of the United States at birth, whose birth is registered in the United States. That is issued by a federal, state, or... So the first one doesn't qualify, does it? It's an impossibility. You find me the record that is registered in the United States for my birth when there's no such registry. That is issued by a federal, state, or local government agency. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is a census record. That's not a birth registration record. That's a census record. You see what we're getting at, folks? For me, I think it's pretty simple. And I don't see why other people can't take these same arguments and destroy them. It says it in their words, their own codes, in plain writing, and it's all applicable to the Department of Defense because it's all a military operation. United States, the president thereof is the commander-in-chief of a commercial military unit, which is a corporate entity. And so far, 2 codes, 19 U.S.C. 81O, residence of zone, says no person shall reside within the zone except federal, state, or municipal officers or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board.
A military board.
Yeah, it's the Secretary of Commerce who regulates the Bureau of Vital Statistics and the Secretary of Treasury relative to the fiat papers, the commercial papers issued as orders and notes. And the census is voluntary. I haven't messed with the census since I was born. I didn't do it when I was 20. I didn't do it when I was 30. I didn't do it when I was 40. I didn't do it when I was 50. Or whatever age I was at the time they do those census. I would have been 54. Didn't do it. 44? Nope. 34? Nope. 24? Nope.
Every
Yeah,
10 years,
census.
which is a banking number.
Yeah. So let's continue on. Now that we know there's an inconsistency, an impossibility, you now have the ability to do your research and put something together to make this rebuttal for what it is. The documentation represents something, and it represents the gifting of a nationality known as a United States citizen, so that I could obtain money, property, labor, or services on the full faith and credit therein, proven by the seals. That's what carries the full faith and credit. The next one we got comes from Title VII, Agriculture. Why are we dealing with agriculture? Because we're dealing with regulation, Subtitle B, Regulations of the Department of Agriculture, Rural Housing Service. I don't care what house you live in. It at one point in time was rural. Through housing and urban development, the city starts out very small, usually just a small cluster, and over time it grows and develops. And housing and urban development continuously, repeatedly expands upon the local area into the rural areas. Rural utilities, or rural business cooperative service, that's how they get it. Remember those cooperative agreements we were talking about earlier? And Rural Utility Service, Department of Agriculture, program regulations, personal property, servicing and liquidation of chattel security, transfer of chattel security and executive office property, and assumption of debts. Transfer of chattel security and executive office property and assumption of debts. That birth registration is an executive office documentation. They're the ones that hold the requirements, minimum birth registration requirements, the Department of Defense as an executive order. Transfer of chattel security and EO property and assumption of debts. Chattel and EO property may be transferred to eligible or ineligible transferees who agree to assume the outstanding loan. Who agree to assume the outstanding loan. That chattel document is a mortgage document. It's a death gauge. Mortgage. Operating on a decedent capacity recording all of the commercial transactions, and that one time at one point in time when there's a death certificate to match up, that record can be collected up and entered into the National Archives for its historical values, the statistical data elements. You suppose that's when they plan to give that loan back or repay that loan?
I don't know. All I know is they pulled a fast one on everybody. That's for sure.
Oh, wait till you see the next fast one, dude.
It's
You know what a
just-
borrower is, don't
it's
you?
just- oh yeah, the borrower. Oh god.
Yeah, yeah. Watch this. Watch this.
Jeez, God.
Well, let's look at EO property first. EO property is non-security chattel property purchased, refinanced, or improved with EO loan funds. Does that reissue sound like a refinance?
Sure
When
does.
you get a birth certificate, is that a property purchase? Is that non-security chattel property purchased? But it's got those two seals on it showing that it has full faith and credit, and you can reissue or refinance that full faith and credit within that document for the value that you place in it to match that full faith and credit?
Yep, I'm saying that's my proof that I'm a preferred holder of their stock.
Yeah, you're a holder in due course with right to enforce the document, and that document or instrument, and that instrument
With
has
special
the full faith
drawing
and credit.
rights. With
Yes,
special drawing rights.
Exactly. You have special drawing rights to draw up a letter of instruction or to draft up, a letter of instruction, which is an order, and then transfer that to a trustee who will draw up the proper instruments to facilitate that transfer. So what is EO property? We got that. What is chattel security? Chattel security is chattel property which may consist of, but is not limited to, inventory, accounts, contract rights, general intangibles. That's your information on there.
Yeah,
Crops,
person.
livestock, fish, farm, business, and recreational equipment. Recreational equipment. Are you equipped to take that chattel document and recreate the value that was supposed to return to you long ago?
Yep. I think it's time to copyright my DNA and every part of my body. For sure.
And supplies, and which is covered by financing statements and security agreements, chattel mortgages, and other security instruments.
There it is.
Okay. So now we know that. What is loan again? Loan is the provision of funds by the agency directly to an applicant in exchange for repayment with interest and collateral to secure repayment.
Great, because I loaned them that a long time ago and they owe me.
Yep, and that document is a security interest for that collateral repayment. Understand the language. That's repayment. That's a repayment to you for what you loaned to them with interest, and it's the principal interest that you're with. You're with principal interest, not a gain. It's not talking about a profit here. It's talking about with interest. Understand that neither one of these is capitalized.
I have interest in it.
Right, as the principal. And collateral to secure repayment. So my principal interest is the name, and it's a collateral enumeration with seals under full faith and credit that I can secure repayment.
Yeah, all I know is when they get ready to flip the switch, you think we'll be able to still enforce all this because they owe us whether they change the system or not.
Yep. as holder of in due course. Now watch this. Transfer and assumption. It says a transfer and assumption may also be made when one or more of the borrowers or the former spouse and co-obligor of a divorced borrower withdraws from the operation or dies. Remember, he just spoke about the drawing rights. Withdraws. Withdraws means draw back. You withdraw. You're no longer in the competition. You withdraw. So you're going to draw back from the sporting event. They're all synonymous. And you have a drawback right to draw back what we put into it. So let's take a look at this, a transfer and assumption. Transfer and assumption, the conveyance by a borrower to an assuming borrower. Wait a minute, where's the lender? What was loaned and where's that lender? This here says transfer and assumption. It says the conveyance by a borrower to an assuming borrower of the assets, collateral, and liabilities of the loan in return for the assuming borrower's binding promise to pay the outstanding debt. Remember, I said if you're a creditor, then you're a debtor. The same thing applies here. Male imports the female. Female imports the male. Creditor imports the debtor. Debtor imports the creditor. Borrower imports the lender. Lender imports the borrower. You are playing two things. It is a dual system. Quid quo pro, equal consideration, back and forth. At one point in the conversation, you're going to lend data elements. That, of course, is after you borrow data elements from them on the document. See how that works? Now you become a borrower after they loaned you the document. Then you loan them the data elements. They too become a borrower. You just have to understand what's being done. So you borrow the asset, collateral, and liabilities. You're not required to do so. As a benefactor, you can implement this stuff according to the trust laws. You don't have to enforce your contract rights, so that when you get one of these documents and you try to enforce it, it's not the contract rights that you're enforcing, it's the trust and the value that you're supposed to receive in turn because of the internal contracts that were detrimental and took things from you through mistakes and accidents. Again, all we're doing is correcting the records. Do I have everybody so far?
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I tell you, if you didn't bring this information to me, I probably wouldn't have seen it. I'm focused on other areas, so it helps when you bring stuff like that up.
So the next one we got, the transfer of accounts secured by real estate or both real estate and chattels will be processed under subpart A of part 1965 of this chapter. Who owns the real estate trust again? The real estate investment trust again? Post office, known as the Postal Realty Trust, Inc. They had their own Securities Exchange Commission agreement and documents. And you can go look up the indenture trustee. Oh gosh, what's his name? Rorick or something like that. Roderick. Well, I'd have to look it up again sometime. Maybe we'll do that. So what is a borrower? Borrower. When a loan is made to an individual, the individual is a borrower. When a loan is made to an entity, the cooperative, corporation, partnership, or joint operation is the borrower. So in these venues where you're giving information to them and they're giving you information, it's a borrowing of information. And that's where the power is. Without that information, without that source of information, they wouldn't have anything. That application would sit there and remain blank. When you go fill out a job application, you're borrowing that application. And then in return on that application, you're giving them, lending them data elements, and that's another borrowing in the most basic quantum sense. Otherwise, you could go give them a letter. What do they call those? What do they call a letter of experience? You got so many years of college, and then you got, what do they call those? Resume. Yeah, a resume. Well, it's a resume. You can give them a resume. They can ask you to fill out an application, but they'll also accept a handwritten resume. In case you don't understand that, even McDonald's will understand that. Because you can give them a resume, and so long as you give them all the qualified information that they're looking for in that application, they'll just jot it down on that application and enter it in digitally. You know what I'm saying? So let's go back. Let me see here. I think that was about it for that. I just want to run through here. Effective signature. In all cases, the purpose and effect of signing an assumption agreement. They're telling you right now it's an assumption agreement. What are you assuming? Or other evidence of indebtedness is to engage separate and individual personal liability, regardless of any state law to the contrary. Is to engage separate and individual personal liability. So if you don't qualify that signature stating that you're not taking on the liability, then there's liability in every case. You go down and sign your kids up for school and you don't qualify that signature, there's liability. Mom, when you signed as an informant on that document, you took upon a personal liability. Oops. Release of transferor from liability. Again, you got to release them of their liability. You're going to release yourself of liability and them at the same time, understanding that it's equal consideration and equal benefit, that if you sign in a qualified capacity and release liability from yourself, they can do the same. The borrower and any cosigner may be released from personal liability to agency when all the chattel security or EO property is transferred to an eligible or ineligible applicant and the total outstanding debt or that portion of the debt equal to the present market value of the security is assumed. However, no such release will be granted to any borrower who is liable for any direct FLP loan, which was reduced or terminated in a manner that resulted in a loss to the government. This is why it's important that when you put that value to these documents, you understand there's an inherent interest in the government and you have to pay them an interest. So if you're going to issue, say, a $250,000 bond to a local charity for its use, maybe take 10% of that and only issue $225,000 to the local community, with $25,000 being sent on to the federal government as that tax, that 10% TIV, so they can have the proper internal security oversight. Okay, ISOO, Internal Security Oversight Office. The appropriate official is authorized to approve releases from liability in accordance with 1962.348 or 34H of this subpart. When there will be no release from liability, the transferor and co-signer of a Farm Credit Program's loan must be sent a letter similar to Exhibit F of Subpart A, Part 1955 of this chapter, available in any agency office. I think that's it there. Yep. So understand that that signature is so important in so many different situations. And when you understand how to qualify it and why you're qualifying it and how these contracts work, you have to understand that you have to give them equal consideration. So again, release of liability goes to equal indemnification, goes to equal immunities, goes to equal consideration for the exchange of knowledge, everything. If you want equity, you must first come with equity. If you want truth, you must first come with truth. If you want information, you must first come with information. You have to come willing to exchange something of like kind. So the next one goes to the real property. 7 CFR Part 1965 that it pointed out. Real property. Look what it says. Authority is 5 U.S.C. 301. What is 7 U.S.C. 1989? Let's take a quick look. And that is the rules and regulations. Debt service margin requirements. Certified lender programs. See, the Farm Credit Agency is where all of the insurance and credit and fiat and your commodities, values, and everything are derived from. That's where every source of value comes from. It's the gross domestic product. And it's also where the credit is extended from to the IMF. Certification requirements. The Secretary shall certify a lending institution that meets such criteria as the Secretary may prescribe in regulations, including the ability of the institution to properly make, service, and liquidate the loans of the institution. Condition of certification. As a condition of the certification, the Secretary shall require the institution to undertake. There's that term. See, that's what you're doing when you sign those documents without qualifying the information accordingly or appropriately, is you're undertaking a personal service that you're not getting paid for. The performance of the functions of public office, the caretaking of a decedent. You become an undertaker. To service the loans guaranteed by the Secretary under this subsection, using standards that are not less stringent than generally accepted banking standards concerning loan servicing employed by prudent commercial or cooperative lenders. The Secretary shall at least annually monitor the performance of each certified lender to ensure that the conditions of the certification are being met. Relationship to other requirements. Neither this subsection nor subsection D shall affect the responsibility of the Secretary to certify eligibility, review financial information, and otherwise access an application. Review financial information as it relates to the relationship of the equity that I hold in those records that were created by myself and agencies in our interactions throughout life. What else? Anything else? No, I don't see anything else there. You guys got anything before we go on to the next one?
Nope. Taking it all in.
Okay. Then the next one I got is
I was
another
just
transfer.
looking over some notes I had while you were doing the law of nations stuff. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's the source of the law is the law of nations. That's your military codes, folks.
Yeah, like Vattel states that two principles: first, the national law of nations; second, the positive, and the former is that of God and our conscience, and consequently immutable, and ought to be the basis of the positive law of nations.
Yep. And that's that immutable promise to seek God's counsel. Period. So the next one we have is, again, agriculture. And this goes to servicing of water and waste programs, rural utilities, transfer of security, and assumption of loans. It is the agency's policy to approve transfers and assumptions to transferees that will continue the original purpose of the loan. Continue the original purpose of the loan. Assistant Administrator written concurrence is required when the transfer exceeds the State Director's loan approval authority. The transfer will be approved in accordance with the following requirements. General requirements for transferees. The fulfillment of the following requirements for transfers will be determined by the approval official in his or her discretion. The transferees must meet the eligibility requirements of 7 CFR Part 1780 and provide the same information required in 7 CFR Part 1780 Subpart B for application processing. The transfer will not be disadvantageous to the government as determined by the approval official. So again, when we're supposed to be lenders under the nation, we're supposed to be making it a generous donation to the government. We're supposed to recognize their interests. Okay, equal consideration. So say I decided I wanted to donate $200,000 to a local community program, and so I drew up I drafted up a document for $250,000, and in that document I instructed the drawer, the trustee, to draw up the instrument or the instrumentalities and distribute the $250,000 worth of value. One instrument to the government for $25,000 for interest, one document for $200,000 to the local community for its beneficiary interest, according to my grant, and then of course $25,000 back to me for my consideration and my efforts in it, for continued involvement in guiding that benefit in that community program. It's all a matter of knowing how to make a negotiation that's going to favor everybody in those negotiations. If the agency debts exceed the present market value of the security as determined by an appraisal, the transferee will assume an amount at least equal to the present market value, at least equal to, if not more. And this is why I say when I go through to do this correction of the records and transfer those titles, it should show a certain a certain amount. Okay, when I do the forensic audit or have that forensic audit done, it should show those credits and a debit. It should show both, and in the difference, I should be able to have plenty for myself and enough to give back to the government for having taken care of the corrections. And that correction, the value of that return, whatever that is, I would just give them 10%.
Yep, 10% and new them, and then indemnify them.
Exactly. It's an effort to make all persons whole so that no person shall be held liable in any court. That sounds like a release of liabilities all the way around again. Again, that sounds like an amnesty, an armistice, a peace treaty, things that are already there. So again, just a matter of correcting the record. I don't think there's much else. I just wanted to mention these to show you there are certain things that are still synonymous. A letter of conditions, it's the same thing as a letter of instructions, a letter of credit, a letter of intent to meet conditions. Okay? They're using plain writing to tell you what you need to do, and it's all over the place in all of these venues. They're telling you you need a document from the government proving that there was a value in it, that you hold an interest as a principal to the equal value, with a certifying document of instruction for a return or repayment of the same. That's all it is. In every venue, they're saying the same thing over and over again, which is uniform throughout all jurisdictions. They're just saying it in different ways.
Yep. So I'm assuming when I reorder my birth certificate, I get multiple copies of it.
Yep. 11, title to all assets. Again, this is uniform throughout all jurisdictions, and if it's your asset, you're supposed to get it back. Title all assets, unless you direct it to some other use, will be conveyed from the transferor to the transferee unless all parties concerned, including the agency, agree upon other arrangements. So you get the agency to agree by letting them know that, hey, I'm the one directing the funds, and part of the directing is to pay you a portion of those funds as well. We're in agreement here. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I realize there's value in the system, and of course you're going to have to get paid for doing it. You're already getting paid your employment wages for doing so. I just want my value back, and anybody that wasn't involved in this would be at the federal level. Therefore, I'm going to give that interest to the federal government. That's going to help coordinate that U.S. record that fails to have a birth registration. You're going to give them a gift in return by removing that state registration, that birth certificate, putting a value to it, and handing it over to the state. Here you go. Register that. Cha-ching! Damn well they'll run it through their register. They're going to open that drawer and pull out all kinds of credits. Again, they have a release from liability. Transfers may be released from liability when their debt is paid in full or when the debt is settled in accordance with 1782.2. Transfer of facility financed with agency grants. The requirements for the sale or disposition of assets financed with agency grants are determined by the terms of the grant agreement. Again, the nationality was a conference of a United States citizenship. It was a grant of United States citizenship, and it was a disposition of assets financed with agency as that grant. That's a financial setup. The next one, again, under 7 USC or CFR agriculture, is debt settlement. Debt settlement. And again, we're talking about rural utilities. Foreign utilities is what it means. Rural means foreign, utilities, service. And they're utilizing your foreign personal services to sign their domestic government documents of title. That's simple. Pursuant to 7 U.S.C. 1981, this section prescribes policies for debt settlement of water and waste disposal loans, watershed loans and advances, resource conservation and development loans, and 306C water and waste facility loans. With Omnibus Consolidated Rescissions and Appropriations Act of 1996, Public Law 104134 is the Debt Collection Improvement Act of 1996. And again, just like all of the credit comes from the agriculture, the debt is collected by the agriculture. Again, they have to condemn the land of its natural use through housing and urban development for the rural development of utilities and cooperatives for the expansion of that local community out into the rural area. And they get all that data element from everybody that wants to move into the city. I urge you to stay out in the urban areas. And they have to condemn that land of its natural use so they can use it for commercial purposes. That's why they have all the conservation easements and stuff again, like I said. And that's an environmental protection clause. Again, another...
this all ties into the bankruptcy, managing the bankruptcy?
Absolutely. Full faith and credit is given to protection orders. That conservation easement around every property is a protection order. What is it protecting? Again, like we laughed about earlier, animal includes man.
I like your idea about redeeming the land.
Absolutely. That's what we're supposed to do. That's the removal of the title that you were talking about, the alloidal title and stuff. That's the removal of title. No one is entitled to the land. It is his. And you all get to possess it. You can't own it. You don't own nothing. You just use it. It's a usufruct.
Just use it.
Everybody's afraid that they aren't going to get to own anything.
Yeah.
Like Schwab says. You won't own anything and you'll be happy about it. I'm already happy about not having to own anything. The more I own, the more I own, the more responsibilities I take on of having to keep other people from stealing the shit.
Yep, your stuff owns you. I let it all go, man. Whatever it is, it is.
General requirements for debt settlement. And again, this is general requirements for debt settlement, and that's to say the same thing. The law is construed to be uniform throughout all jurisdictions. So the general requirements for debt settlement here is going to apply throughout the other jurisdictions. The debt or any extension thereof. Wait a minute. What about the credit or the extension thereof? You see what happened there? The debt or any extension thereof. Everybody talks about extension of credit. What about the extension of debt? Remember that credit score? What about the debt score? See, these are questions I ask for a reason. The debt or any extension thereof, on which settlement is requested, must be due and payable. So when the government conferred a nationality of a United States citizenship on you, which is an insolvent, bankrupt person, they extended a debt. They took your credit and extended a debt. It's time for them to extend full faith and credit by you giving the debt back. Do you understand?
Balance the books.
The debt will be due and payable either under the terms of the note or other instrument, or by acceleration, unless the debt is to be canceled without application under paragraph E2 of this section, or charged off under paragraph F of this section. Ooh, we're going to see the federal codes about charge off and cancellation of debt. You see why it's important to read this stuff, folks? Normally, all security will be disposed of prior to the date of application for debt settlement, unless it is necessary to abandon security through the debt settlement process. What? What? Huh? Normally, all security will be disposed of prior to the date of application for debt settlement. Why would you do that?
I don't know.
Unless,
That's twisting my mind there.
well,
one.
because it's necessary to abandon the security through the debt settlement process.
If the servicing official determines that further collection efforts would be ineffective, uneconomical, not in the best interest of the government.
What was finance? Remember our definition of finance the other day? Come on.
I can't remember.
Okay. So let's pull it up. So if at the beginning you're going to go to a bank and you're going to finance an automobile, finance means settle a debt. Do you see that? Settle a debt. It literally comes from settle a debt. Make an end, settle a debt. So when you walked into the bank and you signed that documentation to finance the house, you just settled a debt. They called it a loan. You agreed. You babbled. They caught you up in a game of babble. Okay? How's that get you by the nuts? Huh?
I just say that's false and misleading statements.
Yes, it is. In such cases, debt settlement may proceed if the servicing official determines that further collection efforts would be ineffective. Finance is the settlement of a debt. All you have to do is teach them that that's what it means. And I guarantee you, if you go further, you're going to create a further debt against the United States and their interest. Uneconomical, because you're going to make another charge against the United States. I don't suggest that. And not in the best interest of the government. I don't suggest that. Daddy ain't going to like that. Debtors will not be permitted to sell security and use the proceeds as part or all of a compromise adjustment debt settlement offer. See, I'm not doing a debt settlement. I'm doing a record settlement. I'm going to settle the record, which is both the debt and the credit. Okay? Request for debt settlement will consist of Form RD 1956-1, application for settlement of indebtedness. Current financial information, description, and estimated market value of collateral and status of operation, i.e. numbers of users, compliance with environmental issues, etc. And that's why we're talking everything has to do with the environmental issues and the compliance thereof, particularly when it comes to animals that include man. Include but not limited to man. Okay? You have to put yourself under that environmental protection and your person under the international protection of persons, and that's under the American interests with the governmental interests.
So that would probably be a benefit to get the TWIC card that I keep hearing about.
That SWIFT card, you're talking about the bank card.
No, TWIC, it's for federally protected people.
I haven't even
People-
dug into that yet. I've heard about it, and I've got it in my notes.
Yeah, it's called the TWIC card. I've heard about it, but I haven't had time to research it yet. But people say they use it at traffic stops and stuff like that. They let you right through barricades and airports and everything else. Federally protected person. I don't know how you get it though.
Well, I'm certainly checking into it, but again, I'm one of those guys. My yay be my yay, my nay be my nay. I'm trying to do this without having to have any documentation, so that all I got to do is give them a certain reference, and they can look in the system, and it will be permeated in their system. Do not touch.
That would be awesome.
Not subject to intercept. You better listen to this guy. He's giving you a number in lieu of a name and address, and that number says do not intercept.
Yep.
Debts ineligible for settlement. Debts will not be settled if referral to the Office of Inspector General and or to the OGC is contemplated or pending because of suspected criminal violation. Civil action to protect the interest of the government. Civil action to protect the interest of the government. So if there's a civil action...
You're on a different document? I'm
No.
still on the finance screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Well,
So debts ineligible for settlement. Debts will not be settled if referral to the Office of Inspector General and or to the OGC is contemplated or pending because of suspected criminal violation. The debt will not be settled if civil action to protect the interest of the government is contemplated or pending. So you cannot sue them, folks. If there's a civil action and you're going against the government or even trying to protect the interest of the government, they're not going to settle the debt. You've got to protect it yourself and hand the interest over to the United States in that transaction. This is not a court case. This is a private remedy. Remember, we spoke of equity earlier. The information is the equity. It is not a banking situation. It is not a public situation. It is a matter of private equity, of return of the credit that was already depositioned and used in their system. An investigation for suspected fiscal irregularity is contemplated or pending, or the debtor requests settlement of a claim that has been referred to or a judgment obtained by the United States Attorney. The settlement offer and any other related payment must be submitted directly to the United States Attorney for consideration. It's got to be settled out of court. We've heard this term many times, and it's got to be settled out of court. That's my take on it anyway. This is not legal advice. Types of debt settlement. Typically, debt settlement will be accomplished through compromise, adjustment, and that's what we're doing, is the adjustment. The record needs to be adjusted for correctness. And in that correctness, those credits are supposed to be returned. And from now on, for all future occurrences, there is no placement of public liability. It's a private placement in equity. Charge-off or cancellation. Any debt remaining after the security has been liquidated by sale or transfer. That's how you liquidate. Has been liquidated by sale or transfer. Okay, you don't go to court in a bankruptcy proceeding and that's what liquidates. No. It's a sale or transfer. Will be canceled if there are no assets from which to collect the debt. The United States is insolvent and you cannot collect a debt. Okay? So the only thing you can do is correct the record and have those credits that still remain, that still exist in that system, be forwarded back to you where they belong. And again, in the future, no more public liabilities. That's creating a debt against the United States, and that is against the interest of the United States. And they will not allow you to settle that debt. The serving official will proceed with advice from OGC and the national office as required. And this is why I mentioned the Treasury Offset Program and the UCC 11. As to date, neither one of them has showed a debt against me in that person. Therefore, they can't require a settlement of debt because it would be against the interest of the United States. Just them claiming a debt is against the interest of the United States. They're claiming a debt against the creditors, people. So let's take a look at the last one I've got for tonight, which is under Title 40 of the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. And it says, protection of environment. Remember, folks, full faith and credit is given to protection orders. Why? Because that very easement, conservation easement, that allows this protection order to be enforced on every piece of land is evidence of an insurance wherein the Housing and Urban Development condemned the land of its natural use for commercial purposes. The very blasphemy of the record by officials who take an oath to God, and that oath to God, priory, and with superiority, command them to go forth with abundance, or with in prosperity and abundance to multiply. And instead, they're condemning the very land that he gave them to do so by converting everything to persons and their use, and he is no respecter of persons. I don't believe we were meant to build these communities like this. I think it's blasphemy. But again, not legal advice, and certainly not anything more than my opinion. But we see here, it says Environmental Protection Agency, effluent guidelines and standards. What is ARDS? There's stand. What is ARDS? Maybe we'll look up that real quick when we're done here. But it says general pretreatment regulations for existing and new sources of pollution. Now, when you go peeing and pooping all over the place is a new source of pollution as an infant They want to regulate that, particularly if you're not using those cloth diapers and you're using some kind of plastic and absorbent material that might create some kind of inherent rash or something on some little babies. We don't know. Where they would have to use some kind of synthetic medication to maybe treat that little rash. I don't know. It just seems all excessive to me. So the simple statement is that there's a variance from categorical pretreatment standards for fundamentally different factors. So who's funding what? See, fundamentally different factors. The intangibles, the mentality. You see it here? If you don't see it, let me point it out. It is mental, and that is a funding, a system that gives value to things. You are funding the information. You are putting value in that information. I hope you learn how to increase that value for its actual credence. Definition: the term requester means an industrial user or POTW or other interested person seeking a variance from the limits specified in a categorical pretreatment standard. In establishing categorical pretreatment standards for existing sources, the EPA will take into account all the information it can collect, including those blood samples at the local hospital where they have to dispose of those things in environmentally protective security containers. Develop and solicit regarding the factors relevant to pretreatment standards under Section 307B. In some cases, information which may affect these pretreatment standards will not be available, or for other reasons will not be considered during their development. So even if you have your child at home, there might be a situation sometime where they're going to create this documentation because you entered a signature for some kind of benefit or public accommodation service from one agency or another, known as a state minimum contact requirement, where now all of a sudden you granted them information and they get to enter it into their system, and they get, again, at that time, if they don't have a state's vital statistics jurisdiction applicable to that and exclusive to that individual, they will create an individual record and maintain that record on that individual. They will enumerate it. As a result, it may be necessary on a case-by-case basis to adjust the limit in categorical pretreatment standards, making them either more or less stringent. More stringent as a protection of the American interest and the protection of the internationally protected person by the United States and all of its Department of Defense regulatory agencies, as they apply to certain industrial user within an industrial category or subcategory. And the only reason you file an SS5 when you turn 18 is because you're going to go out and work within the industries, or you're going to get a higher education so that you can go out and work in the industries, whether it be white collar or blue collar. This will only be done if data specific to that industrial user indicates it presents factors fundamentally different from those considered by EPA in developing the limit at issue. The limit at issue is that you have to be a United States citizen or resident of the state. Does that make sense, guys?
Yep. That
Fundam-
is a lot.
well, in one
That you put
statement
out
again,
tonight.
and
I'm
in
gonna have
one
to
statement,
rewatch this video.
I'm telling you, there are variances from categorical pretreatment standards for fundamentally different factors, and it takes one impossibility, and that is the impossibility of being a United States citizen as a resident in the state. It's impossible. There is no birth registration in the United
Right.
States. And that is a requirement under the departmental regulations in plain writing for the minimum birth registration requirements.
And that's where our Path to Freedom tells you to go on E-Verify and do the record search, and it'll show that you're not a U.S. citizen on there.
Now, I don't need that record.
Yeah.
I can point out the fact that the ABA says there's
law.
no birth registration.
Yeah,
So
right.
nobody needs it. All you need to do is refer to the American Bar Association. Now come after me in your stupid courts. I've got a documentation. I've got a document that says United States citizen as a nationality when there can't be any such thing through a birth registration because there is no birth registration in the United States. So did you just create a fictional certificate and then allow me to possess it and as holder of due course enforce it by putting value into that value or that document that had no intrinsic value in it? See, that's the same with Federal Reserve note. It has zero intrinsic value unless you put it in there. This whole system has zero intrinsic value unless you put it in there.
So they got everyone believing they're a 14th Amendment citizen.
Yep. That's just a record a tracking system for a 14th Amendment citizen that is supposedly floating out there in the ethereal seas of merchants.
I mean, they got a lot of redemption
maritime
to be doing for people that are in jail for that shit.
Well, it's the people that have to redeem. Again, it's not them that's going to do it.
Man. Yeah, they ain't going to do nothing voluntarily. And I'm sure even bringing the evidence that there is no United States citizen will stop them from throwing you in jail or whatever.
No, not at all. That's why it's important to be diligent in your research so that you know what you're presenting and prepared so that if sometime they throw something up that you haven't come across yet, you are willing and prepared and able to do that research so that you can correct it within a reasonable time.
But I think you'd be able to stand on that not a U.S. citizen thing pretty good, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
You are. Like,
absolutely, I can. I can't say about anybody else, but I can.
Yeah, you got to just know it and know that that's true. Not take any other answer from them.
None at all.
Whatever it is.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're done. Like I agree. It is a lot of information, but again, those that your head's hurting, I hear a couple comments in here. My brain hurts now, Keith. And I appreciate that, Scott. My brain has hurt a lot myself. But again, it's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more research you do.
Exercising your brain, man.
Right. The more research you do, the more research you do, the more you're going to remember of this. The more you're going to run over these same elements over and over again. And you're going to start putting those dots together. It's just going to automatically start lining up.
I must have missed that finance one because when you read that, I was like, what? I didn't see that one before.
Yeah, that was 2 days ago. 3 days ago, I did a video on finance at night. And then the next morning, because I forgot the last definition of finance and loan, I went ahead and started my next morning's video out with finance and loan. And then we went into postal finance. But anyway. Wiz, could you please explain how a trustee name can remain of the title after purchase of property into the trust? It's that's what I'm telling you. It's the record. It's not you. It's not your property. It's the record. Fix the contemplation of what that record is and what it can do. And that's easy. Could you please explain how a trustee's name can remain off the title after a purchase of property into the trust? Yeah, the trustee's name isn't supposed to be on the title. Trustee isn't supposed to claim the property. The trustee has no claim to the property. If anybody's name, it would be the benefactor or beneficiaries. All right. Well, on my way out, I'm certainly going to thank everybody. Moonbug, KY, Rebecca, Channel 3. Who else? Kara's here again. Greetings, Kara. Metaversal Miscreant, Jason Calhoun, Zach L. Appreciate it. Everybody. Lex Animata. Greetings again. And I really urge you, some of you guys to come up on the panel. I'd much rather have you come up and make your comments like this. Assets, credits must always equal liabilities, debits. Books must always balance for world commerce to operate. The commercial account must be cleared within 3 days, which is codified. You know, I really wish you would come up and make your comments and ask your queries.
I agree. Like Learning how to speak properly is important.
Yes, and let me bring something
paranoid about being up here, but I got to learn how to do it.
And I want to bring up, while we're on that subject there with the 3 days, this is why we're doing what we're doing, is tying into the general ledger with a master trust account somewhere. This one here has master trust account, and it is set up through the Postal Service. This is an online master trust account at Postal One sites. Okay, mine is not. I do not have this one set up. I do have the Enterprise Payment System account set up in the trust name, and then I've got this one to establish and a local bank account to establish. I just got my birth certificates yesterday. Like I said, I got 3 of them. I've got my certificate of trust drawn up. A couple other things. I've got my receipts, and I'm ready to go down to a bank. I've got a couple more to call tomorrow. See if I can get some more information before I go see him next week. Sit down with a signature, medallion stamp signature guarantee banker, so that we can do this by them signing what I draw up. See, I'll be able to take these things and draw up a letter of instruction, stamp them, sign them, hand it over to them, and that's a draft. And then they get to draw up the actual instruments and sign them as trustees, being released of liability based on my instructions to get it to the Treasury so that they can do their job, because he's just the transferee. Now the Treasury can do their job. That's all we're doing. And it says here, Handbook F101 revision, reconciling master trust accounts at Postal One sites, which are online electronic sites. Effective immediately, Handbook F101 Field Accounting Procedures is revised with a new procedure for reconciling master trust accounts for Postal One for Postal One sites. Postal retail units, not the contract postal units, but the retail units, postal retail units that are interfaced with Postal One are no longer required to reconcile master trust accounts once a month. Instead, these sites will receive a narrowcast, not a broadcast, but a narrowcast master trust exception report when there is an out of balance status for 3 consecutive days between Postal One and the general ledger. See? Oops. So when we can find that routing to have that Postal One account set up with the general ledger so that it goes through our enterprise payment system account, which is a merchant account that is an extension of a private trust and shows that it's internal, a foreign money country judgment, and that it's based on operating on credits only, then they cannot demand money. Okay? It's operating in a cooperative agreement in trust. So anyway, I will go ahead and, like I said, do some research on that. You called it the TWIC card, TWIK.
I'm not exactly sure how it's spelled. I've heard people talk about it.
I briefly looked at it. It's TIC.
TIC, TIC card. Okay.
TWIC.
TWI. Let me look it up.
And the other thing I heard is after you get your birth certificate authenticated, you have to accept and acknowledge it and record it at the clerk's office. Not sure if that's true.
Right. Yeah,
I heard that.
Well, that's what holder in due course is. It's obviously I accept it. It's obviously I acknowledged it, and now I get to enforce it. And that enforcement is because it's full faith and credit. I can use it as the security instrument that it is, chattel document, a document of title that entitles me to full faith and credit. And the evidence is on the face of the document.
That's the system. We need to get that all written down with extensive list of what you need to do, because I know parts in different ways and everyone's got a different path, and I've been looking at all this stuff and I get it mumbled and jumbled up together. You know, so many different ways of doing things. So
yeah, and like I said, I know
works the best for each person, I guess.
Yep, and like I said, I know that's a lot of information tonight, folks, but
it is a lot.
I hope you can take your time to review it as much as you need to find out how it's correlating. That information is your equity. You entered it into a record that created an impossibility, and that's that United States citizenship can't apply. You can accept it as the gracious gift it was intended to be, and go forth in an imperfect usufruct and use it for its benefit, again, as it's intended. That's the equal consideration of extending credit as you've extended debt all your life. That's the equal consideration, is that if I'm going to be a loaner, or if I'm going to be a borrower, then I've got to be a loaner as well. If I'm going to be a debtor, I've got to be a creditor as well. It's an opposing dynamic in a dual system, and everybody only wants to play one side. You've got to quit that. You've got to learn both sides. You've got to learn these different ways that they use the grammar and understand the different options you have. Without that, you just go around saying no, 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 no. They're wondering what's going on too. So,
and they purposely put false information out there to jack people up, put people off track, for sure.
Well, not only that, but they disclude the information, like we saw earlier on. There's certain information that they're supposed to be teaching in these public education programs, and they're not. They didn't teach you what that citizenship was about. They took civics out of class.
Yep.
How can they? And if they took civics out of class and didn't teach you what that citizenship is for, and they took finances out of class, what are you doing?
Yep, it's all intentional.
So anyway,
they want obedient slaves, not highly educated people.
Yep.
On that note, because people are learning.
Yeah, like I said the other day, it's accelerating.
It is.
So, on our way out, you guys got any last things to say?
I remain excited from what I see.
You remain excited?
Absolutely.
Good
people are waking up.
Things are coming too. Yep, I feel like
young minds are waking up.
I hope so. That's the intent, is to wake up the younger generations to the absurdities that they're going to be subjected to if they don't learn this stuff themselves. Because I don't want to see my younger generation being bitch-ass slaves all their life.
Nope.
Absolutely not. Well, Keith, I always appreciate your time, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same here.
All glory goes to him, and I appreciate all the support as well, guys. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. Make sure you hit that PayPal link if you can share some love. Every little bit is always appreciated until I get this stuff figured out. And like I said, it might take a bit yet. You saw some of those notes in there. It might take 3 years to declassify this information and get things rolling. I don't know. These people are not going to be very agreeable right away. This is all going to be new information. Most
all
of it.
denial.
Yep.
They're going to be denying.
So I think I'm probably going to be coming up onto greater frustration here in the short-term future than I have over the last 7 years with my research, because now I'm going to have to be interactive more and more so, and become fully interactive, not just with the bank and some of these other people, but with the entire community. There's going to be a point in time where I'm going to have to start doing some local seminars to help get some local people involved in this, so we can do things through the city council and county commissioners and stuff like that. We really have to learn how to partake in our efforts as the people superior to the government. That means that when we do this stuff, we've got to take on that full charge and not be lazy and quit the due diligence that we need to keep this going. That's what happened in the past. People gave up that due diligence.
Yeah. Stay in honor and help teach other people. It's the only way it's going to go anywhere. I know people do, they figure this out, and then they get the big paycheck, and then they sign NDAs, and then they're gone, and leave the rest of us all hanging to figure it out ourselves.
Yep. And thank God there are some that can read. All glory goes to him. And again, one of the reasons I need people up on this panel is so that I'm not the insane idiot. Because if you ever find something that I'm wrong on, I need you to point that out. I may not see it. So one last thank you for everybody. And you know me, God bless. I love you. I don't care if you don't love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. So may God bless you, and have a good night. Bye now.
All right. Good night. Thanks, Keith.
Peace, everyone.
Peace.